If I can begin just by saying thank you to you all, because amongst those achievements are the work that you have been doing. And without that, there'd be no project and no Connected Communities. The HRC is hosting the Connected Communities programme. And so I think that's quite important to emphasise that we are the hosts and the leaders of it rather than the programme in its entirety, because Connected Communities is all about connections. It's all about making connections cross-council from the Research Council point of view. It's all about making connections across disciplines to make sure that illuminations in one area are matched up with illuminations in the other. And it's also, and I think this is actually the most important point, it's also about making connections across different kinds of organisations. I think if one thinks about the way research is evolving in the UK, I think over the next 5-10 years or so, increasingly it'll be the case that research is produced between organisations and not just in single organisations. And I think one of the great things about Connected Communities is that it's brought together academic and non-academic, it's brought together researchers and community workers, and I think that is the real connectedness, which is the great triumph. Raymond Williams, I think it was, once said that culture was the hardest word in the English language, but I think community runs it close. But I'm a simple-minded kind of bloke, and I just think community is about people doing stuff together. And it's great that in this case that stuff includes research, and it's such a vital part of the way we're thinking about the future. So once again, thank you for coming, and thank you for all the great work you've done for Connected Communities. What I'm going to do now is introduce Mark Llewellyn. Professor Mark Llewellyn is the Director of Research at the HRC, and he's going to give a brief synopsis of the kinds of things that are featured in the programme. So, Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Rick. And just to echo Rick's comments about how great it is to see you here today. Many of you are familiar faces. There are also lots of new faces in the room, which is great. I've been involved with the Connected Communities programme as an award holder, and now my role as Director of Research for about 3 years or so. And it's been really exciting to see how the programme has evolved over the course of that time. It's also interesting to see how the programme is envisaged to evolve over the next few years. And what I'm really going to touch on is very briefly, and it is very briefly, an overview of the range of projects that we're supporting through the programme. You are going to have the opportunity during the course of today, and some of you will have already taken that opportunity to look around the posters here and to hear about the different projects we're funding. There are around 30 project teams that are represented at the event, and they'll be able to give you a view on what the projects that they're doing are contributing to the broader theme, but also how that theme has itself shaped the way in which they've thought about their research and participation for researchers. The Connected Communities programme has a vision which is to mobilise the potential for increasingly interconnected, culturally diverse communities to enhance participation, prosperity and sustainability, health and well-being by better connecting research, stakeholders and communities. Necessarily, as Rick's already mentioned, that involves a great degree of partnership. This rather busy slide gives you a sample of some of the partners that are involved in projects we're supporting. The Connected Communities programme is a partnership amongst the research councils. 5 research councils are involved in it, led by the HRC. It also includes the EPSRC, the ESRC, the MRC and NERC. But alongside that, we have somewhere in the region of 400 partners that are part of current or recent projects that have been funded by the programme. That's literally involved hundreds of communities in the course of the research that have been undertaken. And some of those partnerships are going to be reflected in the discussion we're going to have in the next part of this session. The awards we're going to be announcing today, and I'm going to name a few in a moment, bring the total number of projects funded under Connected Communities since 2010 to over 250. That's a huge range and diversity. As you can imagine, the scale of those projects is also dramatically different. At the very early stages, we invested in a large number of scoping studies and research reviews that really brought together some of the initial ideas and scoped out the potential for larger projects and larger activities that they might have. As part of that, we asked the Scoping Studies and Research Review groups to publish reports which indicated both the research they'd undertaken, the kinds of reading that they'd delivered as part of the project, but also future research questions. And those reports are all published on the Connected Communities website. And I'm pleased to say that this week a further 20 reports will be published. They range from woven communities, exploring community connectedness through baskets, basket making and basket use in Scotland, through to projects about active citizenship, public engagement and the humanities by using a historical lens to look at how the Victorians addressed those questions through their institutions and organisations. Many of those projects are represented here in the posters, but you can also learn much more about them from the website. Now, those scoping studies were effectively small-scale development awards that allowed people to develop the ideas that might lead to larger projects. But the programme has already begun investing in larger-scale activities. In 2010, we supported 3 large projects, each of around £1.5 million, which explored the question of communities and the creative citizen and the creative economy. And these projects were co-funded with the EPSRC in particular, but were inspired by research development workshops, bringing together researchers as part of the programme to foster collaboration and to really reflect the diversity of what could be achieved through collaborative research. Alongside those large-scale projects, I'm pleased to announce today the launch of new projects in community engagement and mobilisation. At the showcase today, we're going to launch 5 projects, and combined these 5 projects represent over £7 million of investment from the AHRC and the ESRC. They involve over 60 partner organisations and researchers in over 20 disciplines. Two of the five projects are funded through an ESRC and AHRC joint call on community development, and Rosalie Ward is going to speak on that in a moment or two on behalf of the ESRC, as she was part of the panel involved in the decisions around those awards. Alongside those 2 projects that are indicated here, we also have 3 new large-scale projects on communities, cultures, health and well-being. These were developed initially from a workshop we held in Cardiff in 2001. And one thing I really would want to flag about the programme is the way in which it builds up a community of researchers around initial ideas in the first stage, brings together clusters in workshops, in events like this, to really diversify the kinds of groupings that come together, but also help them to build those larger scale collaborations for these projects. These projects in particular are looking at how visual arts and how interventions from creative practice can engage with a range of health and wellbeing issues, be it in the issues of dementia and the community participation and the community needs around that, through to the question of health-related policy and service design developments alongside that. We're also today announcing a further engagement with the Heritage Lottery Fund, and Karen Brookfield is going to talk on this in a moment. But as part of an ongoing, very successful collaboration we've had with the HLF, we are pleased to support 18 new awards, which are involving multidisciplinary research teams across the UK to support hundreds of community groups undertaking small projects to explore their community heritage. It's actually bringing that research out there into those community groups. In addition to working with the All Our Stories projects run by the HLF, we've also stimulated some new ideas for community heritage projects, and 11 of those are being announced today, and further details of those again will be on our website. Alongside these activities, developing from a workshop we held around about this time last year in Bristol around communities, cultures, environments and sustainability, we're also funding 10 community co-creation and production projects, some of which arose from that event, and also 11 projects on the theme of communities, culture and environment. And that's being done in partnership with the Living with Environmental Change programme. One thing that's been really interesting from my point of view is to see the spin-outs there are from the Connected Communities programme, the way in which it touches on other investments and other large-scale activities by the research councils. I've already indicated that there are around 250 projects being funded under the programme. It's a tall order to convey that within the context of even an event that's one day long like this. And it's a particularly unenviable task for our 2 theme leadership fellows who are sat on the sofa here who are going to talk to you in a moment. What Kerry and George are doing is going out there and speaking very actively to the projects that we're funding, the research that has been supported, but also trying to construct narratives around what the programme is trying to achieve, how it's developed the potential for communities and also researchers, and the ways in which that might evolve over the coming years. And that evolution into different activities is part of the second thing that I wanted to talk about very briefly today, which is to launch 3 new initiatives as part of the programme. The first of these is a highlight notice or a specified call within the research grant scheme run by the AHRC. You all have a little postcard, or you should have on your seats as part of your packs, and that's going to be looking specifically at the role of design in communities. That highlight notice is going to run until January 2014, so there is time to bring forward large-scale projects as part of that. And it's really going to allow an opportunity to think about the role that design plays in the construction, facilitation, and also ongoing support for communities. And I know that there will be some further words about that in a moment. Second new initiative to announce today is our ongoing collaboration with the Heritage Lottery Fund. We are going to collaborate on a series of projects and also a series of coordinating centres over the coming years, which will be supporting the commemoration of the centenary of the First World War by allowing communities to have a very active involvement in the way in which they commemorate that centenary, but also supporting different kinds of engagement amongst the research community and its commemoration. That call is going to be launched next month. And finally, and this will be touched on, I think, in a speech later this morning, there is the investment that will be made in capital funding, so particularly in the kind of equipment needs and the digital needs of communities, to harness the potential of arts and humanities researchers and the communities they engage with, to really develop activities within new digital technologies, within the creative economy, and also think about the role of these challenges that are there as part of archives, data sets, and new opportunities with technology to feed through into how communities configure themselves, but also what does the community have, or what do the communities have by way of needs as that technology evolves and emerges. So that gives you a highlight of 3 announcements of projects that we're starting to fund or have recently begun, and also 3 new initiatives which you'll hear more about in the coming months.